the damage and the problems produced by disasters cannot be fixed rapidly for all sorts of reasons, because it takes a long time for financial insurance systems to work it out, it takes a long time for governments to get organised, and it takes a long time for the requisite number of builders to do it. So we need to recognise that there has to be a long period of massive disruption to people's lives. And while people can accommodate themselves in the short term to deal with temporary disruption, over time, and by the third year this is really starting to show up, this disruption, the tedium, the annoyance, the frustration, and all of these, what appear at first sight to be relatively trivial problems, are undermining their relationships, their lifestyle, and making people feel massively exhausted, because nothing works easily. And it's like people find it very hard ever to relax, because if they haven't got something to do now, they're worrying about what they have to do. So this all accumulates, and by the third year we see people are starting to run out of energy, run out of resilience and optimism and so on. And so this is the time really we must help people to get it into perspective and to realise they will get through it. But it's going to take a little longer, and therefore they must start to really focus on taking care of themselves for doing this longer term process.
Does it get better by the fourth, or does it compound?
What we'll see is that some people will start to actually come down back into the normal zone, others will go on longer, and so it would be like, if you're running a marathon and a whole lot of people start off together, then some people are going to sort of go faster and get there sooner, and others are going to not get there unless they really slow down and do it steadily. So we will find that by the fourth year, I would be very surprised if we can't point to a growing group of people who are coming out the other side. But it's probably going to be some years more than that before everybody's out the other end.
And so what exactly is that all about? Is it the stress levels and the earthquake being sort of the start of an ongoing battle?
You see, one of the most difficult things I've come to realise is the fact that a natural disaster, because it affects both people's lives and the environment and their houses and their jobs, and for the bereaved and the injured, and even those who aren't injured have traumatic events, so that every dimension of life is simultaneously disrupted. And it's really only in a large-scale disaster that we see this. And so there is no area of life that just smoothly tracks on as usual. So there's no point where people can come back. And therefore, people are actually just moving from one area of problems and adjustments to another, and having to improvise a lot of details in their lives. From my understanding about the roadworks that are going on, it's just not simple going anywhere, and you can't go the same way, and so on. So that, what we know is that when people can do things in routines, and we try, don't we, to develop routines and patterns in our life as much as possible, when we get into that, we free up our mental space. We don't have to think about what we're doing or where we're going or how we're doing it, because it's routine. And so we've got plenty of space to kind of reflect and cogitate on things and get them into perspective and think about the future and process what's happened in the past. And we're constantly sort of, getting on top of things. But when you're not in routine, you can't do that, because you're trying to work out which way do I go today, and what's happening now, and has the insurance company rung, and what will we do about it? And so people are just constantly on this front foot trying to cope with the next thing. And we find that after a few years of this, people sort of have lost their bearings in their life. They haven't actually given enough time to their relationships, and things are starting to come apart a bit. And all they need to do is to actually stop and slow down. That would be my most important message: slow down. Now, I think this is why the All Right campaign is a tremendous initiative, because it's actually giving people simple messages to reflect back to say, hey, this is actually what's going on. Because the rest of the world has moved on and won't really understand the details of the nitty-gritty. And it's once people start to recognise, they can make adjustments. Most people can make adjustments, take time out and slow things down. But it's actually recognising that that's the situation.
Well, that was going to be my question. What can people do? So slowing down is your number one piece of advice?
Yes. You see, when you think about stress, you've got two factors. The first is the actual stressor, the actual situation that's putting the pressure on you. But the second is how you understand it, what it means to you. Because they combine so that you've got a problem, but if I think it's incredibly important, I'm going to be very stressed. But if I've got the same problem and I think that's okay, I'll deal with that in due course and I'm sure we'll get it sorted out, you're not so stressed. Now the problem is that everybody wants it to be fixed as soon as possible. And in every disaster I've been involved in, everybody has felt that things are being done badly, slowly and in a disorganised way. Now the fact is that that's always going to be the case. And while of course we need to give feedback to systems about how to do things better, it is going to simply take years. And if people can accept that and then ask themselves, how can I live in the meantime to take care of what's important, then they're in a good position to recover. If they're going to put all of their other aspects of their life on hold where they just rush around and try to do it and fail all the time because they can't get the systems to respond, they're going to be very stressed and upset.
And you were saying before that for many people the earthquake was just, I guess, the starting point and not even the biggest stress. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, because we can't minimise the trauma aspect. That is, people had very bad experiences, life-threatening experiences, worrying about loved ones and so on. And there's a very important group of people who are bereaved and another very important people who are injured. And some of them have got both. Now these people have a very clear-cut problem of dealing with what happened on the day, but also dealing with the way it's changed their lives. For everybody else, in a greater or lesser degree, their whole community's changed and their lives have changed and their problems have changed. So everybody's sort of suddenly in this altered environment. And so what we find is that there is this constant build-up of one problem after another. And in normal life, we hope that we will have a problem and then a period before we have another problem. But in the disaster environment, it's so complex and so many things are happening at once that the problems that occur are happening to people who are already extremely vulnerable. If you look at the reports of disasters going back 20, 30, 40 years, you'll find they'll use terms like what happened during the recovery was the second disaster. What happened on the day was bad enough, but what happened to us afterwards really was, the icing on the cake that made it absolutely impossible. And I think to a degree we can say there's a lot to be learned about how governments and agencies can respond, and it's a very difficult challenge. But what's more important is that communities need to adjust their expectations so that they are realistic and keep their focus on what they need to look after, what is still there, their relationships, their social networks, their careers, their enjoyments and their cultural activities and all the things that add quality to life. Not let these go.
Is there anything else I haven't asked you that you'd like to touch on?
What I'd like to see is that Cantabrians are able to have conversations with each other where they can compare notes about the problems without feeling depressed about it. There's sometimes a debate between Should we be acknowledging all the problems which will make us feel down and depressed, or should we be optimistic and positive? The problem is, if you're optimistic and positive and it doesn't actually connect with the reality of your problems, then it doesn't work. It actually makes you feel that I can't keep up with it, I'm not good enough. So what we find helps is if people talk about things in such a way as to describe to each other and compare notes so that they get a greater understanding of their problems, and it leads to better expectations. I was talking to somebody on the phone yesterday who had seen me talk on television yesterday, and she said those few moments helped her to realise why she was so tired. And she rang a friend and they talked together about their tiredness. Now, there are a lot of reasons why people in the third year are starting to get very, very tired. If they can feel that that's appropriate and it's okay to take care of themselves and to respect that tiredness, then they will actually regain their energy. But if they feel guilty and bad and lazy and whatever, they're going to keep overriding it, and then we'll see the longer term problems.